Današnji gost Hronike je Pavel Dogi. Dobar dan i dobrodošli u Hroniku.
Thank you very much and for the opportunity of addressing your audience.
Kako biste ocenili položaj Roma u zemljama Evropske unije?
Overall, slightly improved because accession to EU has brought a number of improvements with regard to access of Roma to public services, among them civil registration, healthcare, access to education, sometimes access to housing and employment. All countries that acceded to European Union had preconditions to ensure that the legislation is proper. There's a prohibition of discrimination and structures to work on the issue of anti-discrimination were established. And that's an important part. In varying degrees, one could see progress, but it's still in an incipient stage. There is also this phenomenon of countries becoming members of the European Union and then not being sufficiently in focus. It's like, once you join the club, it sounds like, everything is in place and it's working properly, including, access to rights and protection against discrimination, which is, when we speak about Roma, it's not the case. Maybe it works for other groups and segments of population, but not so much when we speak about Roma. Actually, in the past 15 years, all reports are indicating that regardless of where Roma live, Central or Southeastern Europe or Western Europe, within the European Union or outside of it, the overall sentiment of the majority population towards Roma is pretty similar, and it's one of rejection. Roma still feel that they are not welcome in their own countries. So Roma are on the European continent since 1,000 years, and they are still called upon to go back to India, go back to your country. They are still considered outsiders, and it's not only an aspect of attitude, but also an attitude transposed into action, and that reflects in a treatment that is not equal. We speak here of discrimination. Yeah. The trend in European Union now is that it becomes a little bit more radicalized, and it's becoming more radical. Populists are gaining traction, and they are, scapegoating Roma for all problems along immigrants and refugees, and they actually contribute to fueling this anti-Roma sentiment. Other institutions and international organizations, they are calling this anti-gypsyism. In OSCE, there is no such formal terminology, and we deal with this attitudes and crimes under the umbrella of combating racism and discrimination and intolerance against Roma and Sinti. So overall, going back to your question, there is a slight improvement, but it's insufficient because we speak of a large population. Yeah, in the European Union there are more than 6 million Roma, and the scale and the magnitude of their problem is huge. It's huge, and by the pace that we see and the efforts that are done from the side of the states, we will not see a significant improvement anytime soon, unfortunately.
Da li su narodi u Evropi u dovoljnoj meri upoznati sa kulturom i identitetom Roma?
I would say rather not. And it's not necessarily because they cannot find information and gather information. It's linked to what I've said previously. It's this attitude of rejection. They are not so much interested in the Roma population. They would rather take it outside or the visual range, because it's annoying. It's unpleasing. And to a good extent, you can see that in the way that Roma are called. In most of the countries, Roma are still called Tsigani or Gypsies, especially in countries, English is the official language. And Tsigan is in almost all countries, perhaps not so much in Russia, but in all other countries, Tsigan has a very negative connotation. It's stigmatizing. And firstly, it's never been the term that Roma introduced and presented themselves, because there is no other way to introduce yourself, especially if you speak Romani language, than saying Mesem Rom. I am Roma. Means I am an individual belonging to the group that calls themselves Roma. Okay? And despite the will of Roma, we are still called Tsigan. And this goes even to extreme. Every year in a number of countries, there are motions for approving laws that impose that Roma should be called Tsigan and not Roma. So it shows the level of rejection and prejudice that exists in Europe, and this is regardless whether we speak of European Union or outside of EU.